Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another interview produced by the First Tuesday Conservatives, brought to you by Alpha News Minnesota. I'm your host, Kyle Hooten. This evening, we're joined by Jake Duesenberg, a man at the head of Action for Liberty, an organization that has been leading the charge against Governor Walz's recent coronavirus-induced tyranny. Jake, thanks for being with us.
I like how you put that. That was a good one. I've never thought of that line before.
Yeah, coronavirus, it's a symptom of the coronavirus, actually, is authoritarianism. We're learning that slowly.
We call him tyrant wannabe because I feel like tyrant sounds like a strong leader. And there's this idea that you need to be more tyrannical to show strength and great leadership. And I reject that so much. But so he's a little tyrant wannabe.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think he has quite hardline enough of a personality to be a real tyrant. I like that. So Action for Liberty, you guys have been very busy lately, and unfortunately, I don't think a lot of Minnesotans fully understand what's going on with our governor or with your organization. Give us a little bit of background.
Well, Action for Liberty's mission is to protect liberty for the next generation. And, you know, we've been around basically since 2016 is when we really emerged as a player in state politics. We took out a 22-year bad voting Republican, replaced him with Cal Barr, who's one of the most conservative members of the legislature. But we actually date back a little before that in terms of we were part of the greater Tea Party movement, but that was a very different organization. We did a lot of events and realized that we'd have politicians come to our events, say one thing, go up to the Capitol, do the exact opposite. We're like, wait a second, that's not what we're in the business to do, is just give these guys a microphone. So we changed things up and took on a different approach to politics, something that we actually teach at our quarterly training that we bring staff and volunteers and activists to. But right now, I mean, if our mission is to protect liberty for the next generation, I don't think we've ever seen a fight as big as this right now. And I'm not talking about whether or not Donald Trump gets reelected in November, which most of our supporters want to happen. I'm talking about right now, we have a governor that has unlimited power. And just for the fun of it, I looked up in the Merriam-Webster dictionary a couple months ago what the definition of dictator is. Because I'm like, this is one man ruling, right? All these Democrats that say democracy, we love democracy. You know, one guy is calling the shots. So I looked up dictator. I didn't know I was going to find this. And literally the line it says is a leader or an official, head of state, with unlimited emergency powers. It's literally the first definition in Merriam-Webster. Look it up. I was like, wow. But, you know, if you call him a dictator or you call him a tyrant, the left's like, oh, you guys are friends. It's like, what do you call it when one guy is making all the rules? It's not the legislature. That's a republic. It's not all the people weighing in. That's a democracy, which we don't have. It's a dictatorship. And just because he's not taking people on the street and shooting them, literally, he is taking businesses out in the street and fining them. That is a dictator, and this we can't have this, and that's why we're passionate about fighting against his emergency powers.
100%. Well, how did it get this bad? Because typically when people picture dictatorship, there's some sort of, you know, dramatic sweeping event where the tyrant takes control. But it seems like the situation that we're seeing right now evolved very slowly, and we got here by sort of an incremental process brought about by the coronavirus. Explain to us, how did it get this bad?
So we actually have a very bad law. Actually, we've learned how bad some laws are in the state, like recall laws, if we want to get into that later.
Yeah.
But one of the worst parts about our state government is that the emergency powers, which was really there for things like hurricanes, right? Not in Minnesota, obviously, but after Katrina, kind of woke up the nation. So if there's major flooding or major tornadoes, and then, you know, post 9/11 also, what happens if there's a real serious danger? So I think most people realize there's an ability for an executive to have emergency powers so that he can move things like the National Guard to quell violence or to stop a flood. People understand that, okay? Well, the way the law is written, statute 12.31, is that the governor, and it doesn't define pandemic, by the way, he's just taken amongst himself and all these other governors to use that. It says that the governor can call a 30-day period of emergency powers, and he has to run it by this council. Now, the council's all his people, right? So it's like the Attorney General and Secretary of State. It's like all his people, all yes men, right? And so he's got to do that in 5 days. after 30 days, if he wants to extend the emergency, which I don't believe has ever happened, at least not in modern day history, if he wants to extend it, he could do it. There's nothing to stop him. He can do it indefinitely. But he's got to call back the legislature if they're out of session. Okay, so that's why you guys keep hearing about the legislature coming back for a special session.
Yeah.
So he has to call them back if he's out of session. Otherwise, at any point that they're in session, which usually ends about the third week of May, they can then remove his power with a resolution passed by both the House and Senate. Straight majority vote, 50% plus one. So that's the way that the law is written. Now, that's horrible, right? It should be the other way around. It should be he can ask permission for the legislature to extend an emergency powers, and then he's granted the powers. They got it backwards.
So the governor can seize power, run that through a committee of yes men, as you put it, in a deep blue state, and then the legislator has to be called back if they want to remove the governor's power, but the governor can seize power whenever he wants to. What increments are we seeing, between the legislature meeting? How long can the governor have power before the legislature can come in and try to take it from him?
I mean, at this point, so this is all in precedent. It's a great question, and I don't even know how to answer that question, to be honest with you. In fact, Walz himself believes he doesn't have to call them back. And if you don't know how special sessions work in Minnesota, the governor is the only one that can call a special session. It's up to the legislature to decide how long that special session is going to go. If you guys want to do more research, go to actionforliberty.com. It's action4liberty.com. And we write a lot about this, so you can get a little bit more of the background info. So what we've seen now is him do this since March 13th, first day of the emergency power, right? Remember, he shut down Minnesota's economy, basically. He held a shelter in place. Yeah. And then starting April 13th, he extended the first time for another 30 days, right? So he thought he had this supreme power for 30 days, and then he extended it. He extended again on May 13th. Then after May 13th, every extension, he had to call back the legislature because they adjourned sine die. So they've had 4 special sessions now. At this point, the way we look at this is what's going to continue happening until we end it, which I'm sure we'll get into about how we've advanced and got Democrats to go against Governor Walz, which is amazing, but how also there's some other tricks that Republicans can make, and we're really hard on them if they're not going to play ball like they do, the Democrats do. But in the end of the day, if we're not successful, Walz has to just say, I'm done and I'm going to give up the power. And I don't know, man. I don't know if he's going to do that.
It's not looking good. So when we see the governor doing all these things, shutting down the businesses, turning off the economy, how many of those actions are a result of his special powers? What % of kind of the negative impacts we're seeing result directly from the governor's special power?
So this is the most interesting thing about everything. Like I'm a constitutionalist, right? And I look at the Constitution as 2 things. It says what the government can do. And so if you look at the Minnesota Constitution, the powers to the governor are very limited. And then it also has a Bill of Rights. Our state constitution has a Bill of Rights. It protects free speech. It protects, it doesn't actually protect the right to keep and bear arms, which is an oversight. Yeah. But it protects a lot of things like rights of people that have been accused. It protects equality under law, right? So the governor is completely ignoring the basis of all laws in Minnesota, the Constitution. So what he's doing is clearly unconstitutional. Anyone with the most elementary understanding of constitutional law would say he doesn't have the right to do any of this. But he takes the most vague part of a state statute to give him unlimited power to the point where now he is mandating people wear masks, which is actually contrary to a law on the books right now. You can't wear a mask unless for Halloween or medical stuff, like a medical profession. You cannot wear masks because whatever the legislature thought, they thought maybe this is concealing people, and well, that's what we used to think about these rioters. Is like, look at these masked people. Now it's like, oh, these masked people, they're peaceful protesters. Thank God they're wearing a mask. They don't want to spread the coronavirus. It's like, yeah, they'd be wearing a mask anyhow because they don't want to get their identity. You know a lot about that, Kyle.
I know an unfortunate amount about that and how difficult it is to identify these people when they, rob you of thousands of dollars of gear. It's a big problem.
I don't think that's not related to what Governor Walz has done. I mean, listen, you shut down an economy, a service industry, and that's what the young people do is they have a job. Then you take them out of schools, and what do you think's going to happen? As soon as a little spark happens, there's a raging fire, and then of course, Governor Walz is pretty much, and the whole left seems to do this, is like, this is justified. This is justified. This is peaceful protesting. Oh, well, those were just some bad actors over there, but this is peaceful protesting.
You can't turn off every function of society and then expect people to keep acting normally. That's a very good point. So I want to ask you, the governor's powers are loosely defined. What exactly he can do is loosely defined. Is pandemic defined? Like, is there any point where there's few enough infections that the pandemic, excuse is no longer valid?
Yeah, there's not even, pandemic's not mentioned in it. So it says natural disasters. So that's what he's saying is natural disasters, including, in his word, pandemics, which the question is this really a pandemic at this point? And yeah, it's unbelievable what he's getting away with. And we just look at this stuff, and a lot of people place their hope in the courts, right? There's a lot of lawsuits against Walz right now. So far, 2 have been rejected by the courts, one by a couple legislators, and I just saw Jason Lewis as one in a federal court, were both rejected by judges. These robed gangsters are not going to decide on they don't have a bias towards liberty, and that's the unfortunate thing. They should be strict constitutionalists looking at the law. And if you look at the law, there's just no way they have this kind of power. And so we kind of joke about this. Joke's probably the wrong description, but it's a sad joke. But it's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want right now because clearly no one's following the rules, right? Like statues come down and no one really pays for it. At least not immediately. No one paid for that. Your counterpart at Alpha News was attacked viciously by a woman during a BLM thing. It took a month for them to get her. It's like, this is unbelievable. So there's no rules being followed by these guys. And that's why a big election issue is the law and order, because it's not just the thugs on the street right now that are committing these terrible acts of looting and violence. It's also the heads of states that are committing lawlessness.
Absolutely. So we've got a governor that's not following the rules, a bunch of yes men that enable him to do it. The legislature it's kind of unclear what they can actually do to stop him. The judges, which I think you aptly describe as robed gangsters, aren't doing anything. Tell me, what is your group doing to help bring change to this situation? Because you've been very active trying to interact with legislatures, raise awareness for the cause. What's on your end?
Well, good question. So, like I said, go to actionforliberty.com if people are really interested. I don't want you to miss out on what we're up to because we're growing tremendously. Walz is gaining more enemies by the day. And it's heartfelt because I hear from salon owners and gyms and restaurants and bars, and it's just devastating to these people. So March 13th, Governor Walz declares emergency powers. Everyone didn't know what was going on with this coronavirus. I always say things got real when the NBA canceled their season, right? Like, well, this is another SARS, this is another swine flu. It's like, okay. Then all of a sudden, NBA canceled the season. Like, ooh, what's going on here, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were all quiet, right? We were like, okay, we understand that, seems to be an emergency, right? And morgues were bought at that point, right? And we were told to shelter in place. And that's where it was like, shelter in place. You don't have that right. You don't have the authority to say that. Like literally, we have a governor that told us you can't leave your home. Now, he did it nice enough where you could go on walks and exercise, which, by the way, we should be exercising because, better immune system is a better way to combat the coronavirus. They don't talk about that a lot. But yeah, they told you shelter in place. And then we saw them shut down a sector of our economy. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the right to do that. And Action for Liberty is like, this is the issue. This is the biggest issue of liberty. So we started broadcasting to our people back at the end of March. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of people, we preached mostly to a conservative audience. And we found out a lot of people didn't like what we were saying. Oh, Governor Walz is leading well, all this kind of stuff. Like, whoa, how are these people on our email list? Like, where do these guys come from? But conservatives, philosophically, they actually tend to trust authority more, right? That kind of came out, right? That there's a trusting of authority. Now, that's not happening right now, right? But they generally were trusting authority. So we were like early on the fight here, and we took some arrows on it. But then we started getting a lot of new people into our ranks. At the early part, thousands a day were coming into our ranks, wanting to learn about it because we were leading on it. And so we were able to actually get a vote on April 14th. So that was pretty much after the 30 days. He just extended his emergency powers. We're like, this guy's going to do this again. This guy's going to continue doing this. So we went to Representative Jeremy Munson, a guy we helped get elected in 2018, best legislator up at the Capitol, most conservative member. And him and Steve Drazkowski, and they actually have this new House caucus, all aligned, the four Republicans, pushed on the House floor to get a vote to end Walz's emergency powers. Mm-hmm. And you would think the Democrats would be our biggest enemy. But Kurt Doubt, lobbyist legislator Kurt Doubt, mm-hmm. the leader of the old House caucus, told his people not to vote for this thing.
What was his justification for that? Why would a Republican want to give a liberal governor more power to shut the economy down?
So there's this pettiness up at the Capitol, right? So at that point, he wasn't fully aligned with us, okay? Because he had his own resolution, and it was coming up after the resolution that I think Draz was the one carrying it that day. Mm-hmm. So there's a little pettiness, like, don't you vote for theirs. Doubt's one said, we end his emergency powers, but executive order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 continue to exist, which is problematic, and we were not supportive of his fake end bill. Mm-hmm. So it came down to this pettiness, like, don't you give these guys. Now remember, these 4 legislators left his caucus because of the way that he runs the show. This Kurt Doubt is a lobbyist. He works for Stateside Associates, which is a DC lobbying firm. It's unbelievable that's legal, right? Yeah. So this guy is what you would call the swamp, right? He tells them not to vote. So we only get 15 Republicans, 15 people in the whole legislature voting for this. 14 abstained and the rest voted against it. So most Republicans were against this on ending Walz's emergency power. So there's the battle. That's how we started this thing out, against a guy that thinks he can just have unlimited powers, a dictator, tyrant, whatever you want to call him, and we can only get 15 legislators to say, no, that needs to go.
This is so frustrating to me because the Democrats give the marching orders and suddenly we have Antifa in every single street, burning the cities down. Of course, I'm probably simplifying how that process works. And Republicans just want to unify to seize back control and have the governor stop ruining the economy, and we can't all get on board with that. It's very frustrating. And the fact that you highlight that it comes down to personal pettiness is downright terrifying. We expect these people to be professional legislators that we elected to represent our best interest, and then they can't do that because, Doubt wants his name on the bill. It's very disturbing stuff.
Yeah. Or they secretly don't want it, right? Who knows?
That's another good point. Maybe they're not actually, quite as for the people as they purport to be.
That's right. So that was where we were on April 14th. And like I said, we were early adapters, but we were starting to gain momentum as our organization because we took a leadership position on what I considered very important, and our team did. Mm-hmm. We have a fantastic board and a really good staff, and we were all committed to this thing. And so on April 28th, Doubt's people tried stealing this issue from us because they saw the writing on the wall that this was popular amongst the base. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it was pretty good. We got another vote. The establishment Republicans supported it. We got all 59 votes. Now, there's this thing about Action for Liberty is we're really tough on Republicans because I don't look at things as like Team Red versus Team Blue. I look at Team Liberty. And it's shocking how much the Team Red is not on our side. So we go after Team Red more than we go after Team Blue because the idea in politics is you need to pull the people closest to you over on your side first before start tackling the blue. And we usually can't get past Team Red. So this was huge. We finally got 59 Republicans, all 59 Republicans voting for it. Now, unfortunately, Democrats have a big majority in the House. So we said, we need the Senate now. We got all 59 Republicans before we start working on the Democrats in this House. Let's get the Senate, which is run by Republicans, 3-person majority. Mm-hmm. These con artists that are running the Senate. So I know this group is conservative. I know Alpha News is, but you got to understand, Paul Gazelka is not doing you any favors.
Yeah.
He and his caucus was telling his people, we're not going to bring this up for a vote. Scott Jensen, Dr. Scott Jensen, a state senator, on the final weekend, this is like May 18th, introduced the resolution. And we had already chatted with Scott Jensen. We were telling him, you gotta push this thing and you gotta go against leadership. So he introduced the legislation, and what he did is they brought it up in caucus. So before it even hit the Senate floor, brought up a caucus, and the marching orders were this was not going to get any kind of test vote or any kind of vote, any procedural vote, that they weren't going to make any movement on it. So they adjourned sine die around May 20th, the Senate Republicans 3-person majority, without ever voting to end Walz's emergency power. God. We didn't like that because that was an important issue. So Gazelka got a primary challenger. And that primary challenger's message and campaign was about ending Walz's emergency power, calling out Gazelka's failed leadership. Then you fast forward to June, Walz has to call them back because he extends his emergency powers. First order of business, the Senate passes the resolution to end Walz's emergency power, and they had 3 Democrats on board. So somehow 3 Democrats support it, right?
Yeah.
And you couldn't get the 50 or the 35 Republicans the month before. It's unbelievable. But now we've crossed that next hurdle. We've got Republicans on board. So now we've got Republicans. We actually lost 2 of those Democrat senators since then. Franzen and Frentz, I think those are 2. Franzen for sure. But that doesn't matter because all you need is the majority, and there's enough Republicans to get the majority. So we've had their vote ever since then. So then the focus had to go in the House, and that's when we started targeting Democrat districts. And in June, we got 2 Democrats to join on board, Pawlowski, which is out of Winona, and Representative Marquardt, which is up in a Trump district up northern Minnesota. And then for the last many months, we've been putting the pressure on these guys. We've been buying ads, mailers, a bunch of different things to go after these Democrats that are actually in more conservative districts that need to come along. Because at the end of the day is what you need to do is you need to make sure that these guys understand that if they don't vote the right way, then they're going to suffer in November. And that's what Action for Liberty's doing, is to make sure that they understand they're going to suffer at election time if they don't vote the right way. And so as of September, we have 5 Democrats. We need 9 Democrats on board. We have 5, so we're over 50%. So we need 4 more in October, what we assume is going to be October 9th special session. So we're gearing up here in about a week from tomorrow. And that's what I would encourage members here that are watching this. Go to actionforliberty.com, sign up petition, End Walz's emergency power, and then you'll hear from us how to do it, who to call and whatnot. And especially if you live in their district, because constituents and voters are the most important thing to these people.
Absolutely. And, this is something a lot of people don't understand, that in Minnesota, we're not only fighting an uphill battle against the left, but, conservatives like yourself have to fight an uphill battle against the Republican Party sometimes. It's very interesting. Now, sort of parallel to this struggle you guys have been having of revoking Governor Walz's emergency powers is another initiative to remove him from office entirely. And I think a lot of people don't understand that these are separate initiatives. Can you give us the status update on what's happening with getting Walz recalled?
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're so passionate about this issue and feel like we owe it to the people that have donated and have come into our organization. I mean, we've nearly doubled in size here just in the 6 months of COVID, because we've really taken a leadership on this issue. And so we feel like we need to win on this. And, I'm not just fine settling elections. I want to win now. But, the reality is you might have to go to elections, and we're very busy in elections too. So our team was exploring many different options. One option was to liberate a city and pass a resolution in the city saying that there's legal protection for the businesses in the city. And that passed in Hanover and I should know. Ham Lake. Yeah. So we did get 2 city councils to vote the right way. It failed in places like Albertville, La Crescent. But we tried initiatives there. It wasn't as popular of a method. So that we did try that one. There's also a mass civil disobedience, Restart Minnesota, which we were part of and helping out a bunch of businesses. And in many ways, I consider that the reason that walls eventually caved on shutting down that side of the economy. These guys are still hurt from the shutdown, by the way. I mean, they've opened up 50% capacity, and they're getting fined by Governor Walz. People understand this. He's actually got the Department of Health commissioner as a watchdog of private businesses, and she's like a hitman. They're fining businesses this day. Salon I talked to today, $7,000 fine for not taking electronic reservations. A bar, infamous bar, Alpha News reported on in Hastings, like, was it $7,000 fine for not wearing the proper mask?
Petty stuff. It's not like these people are holding gatherings of 10,000 people. It's like not taking online reservations. $7,000.
Right.
That's terrible.
Exactly. So, this is where it's at. So Restart Minnesota was the other one. The other one was we found some really awesome activists, some strong leaders who started the Recall Walls effort, and it grew pretty quick to a point where they needed a professional organization to kind of help out with it. Mm-hmm. So we've been helping them with the Recall Walls effort. You've probably seen the sign Recall Walls. You can go to recallwalls.org. The problem with the recall is it's not like a lot of other states. It's first of all, the law is horribly written. It's probably one of the worst recall laws in the nation. If we are successful in all the steps, the recall election is not a Republican versus Democrat. Walz. It's should Walz be recalled, and if he gets recalled, then Peggy Flanagan becomes the governor. Then that promotes Jeremy Miller, Republican in the Senate, to lieutenant governor, but lieutenant governors are a joke. So that's essentially going to give Peggy Flanagan. Now, I still support the recall effort because Walz has got to pay for what he did, and also they'd be like a Gerald Ford administration, right? Like no one's going to take Peggy serious because of how she got promoted that spot. But that's if we get past all the steps. The steps are the problem, and I think it's like a dozen steps to finally get to an actual recall election. Mm-hmm. And there's been 3 petitions now submitted to Secretary of State. 2 were stopped at the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. She threw them out. So they submitted the 3rd one, and that seems to be the hurdle that's hard to overcome. But if you overcome the Supreme Court Chief Justice's review, then you actually do public arguments in front of the Supreme Court of Minnesota, not the most conservative judges. And if you make it past that, then it's incumbent on organizations like us, which is why we are raising funds for that and why we are gathering petition signers, because we have a 90-day window to get over 600,000 voters petitions. So
that's a lot.
And the initial petition will line that up with this election. So we were like, oh my God, if we're successful, it's going to be really busy October. So it saved me so I could do a little more hunting this fall. But but we're committed to it. And I do truly believe we need to recall Governor Walz. But I know a lot of people that have marginally been interested in that or signed up always are wondering what's going on. And it's just a horrible law. So when we get past this whole environment of coronavirus, one of the things that organization will focus on is changing some laws in Minnesota. Recall law would probably be one of them, but especially the emergency powers law. Those statutes are just horrible.
For sure, absolutely. So it seems like recalling Walz, a worthy cause, but revoking the emergency powers is a bit more realistic, if I'm interpreting this correctly.
Yeah, it's just like suing the governor. Like, I'm sympathetic to all these efforts, guys. I want to impeach Governor Walz, but we'll never get the Democrat House to do that, right? He should be impeached. Remember why they tried impeaching? Why did they impeach Trump? Abuse of power? Abuse of power? Yeah. I mean, my God, think about what Walz has done.
Yeah. But you've got Pelosi threatening impeachment over the ACB confirmation. We're just using it as like a frivolous political tool. Totally ridiculous. And
exactly. But we know that the Democrat House isn't going to do it. And by the way, if Doubt was in charge, we wouldn't get impeachment either, because they would test in the winds. Oh, the people aren't with impeachment. Well, how are these guys ever going to learn a lesson unless you make them pay for it? And so the reality is the best way, because I know a lot of you guys watching are concerned about this, the best way to end this power is to put the focus on the remaining Democrats so that they vote against their governor and in the emergency power. And we have one more vote, October 9th. We're assuming around October 9th. We got one more vote. And if we don't get them along, you need to be spending money or your time helping out Dan Wolgamott's candidate up in St. Cloud, or helping out Eric Mortensen and Shakopee take out that lunatic Brad Tabke, 55A, going up, to Ely International Falls and going up against Rob Eklund, Thomas Mannon, and good candidate up there, helping those guys and take out the Rob Eklunds of the world who won't come along and vote the right way. That's what you should be doing. Don't focus on St. Paul or Minneapolis Democrats. Those guys are just a lost cause. They're never going to lose their office because they're Democrats. Focus on the districts of Democrats that are voting the wrong way that Republicans can win back. And that's where we could win this policy issue if we can't solve it on October 9th.
100%. That's the kind of pragmatic approach we like on the show, because as much as we'd love to have a red Minneapolis, it's never going to happen.
Never going to happen. Well, who knows? Who knows? I mean, there might be 10 residents left in Minnesota, and we could probably flip them.
Yeah, after everyone's out of business and every building has been burned down, there'll be a couple conservatives left. Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, maybe we will try Republicans for once.
That's funny. So what is the best possible timeline for reclaiming control of the state, and does that differ from the realistic timeline?
Well, what do you mean by
getting emergency powers pried out of Walz's hands?
I mean, so unless he relinquishes them or somehow a court case takes it away, which neither one of those I see as a viable option, we're confined to the special sessions, which Governor Walz has to call. We think if you read statute 12.31, I think it's pretty evident he has to call it when he extends every 30 days. He has made statements to the media that he doesn't believe he has to do it every 30 days. For whatever reason, he's done it already 4 times. But now Republicans in the Senate have kind of grown a spine and have actually fired 2 of his commissioners. So now there's actually something they're doing that's actually painful to Governor Walz. They canned 2 of his commissioners. Mm-hmm. Now Gazelka, who we have big problems with, this guy's not he's not doing the right thing for Minnesota. We called on him to get rid of Jan Malcolm, the Department of Health commissioner. If they want, because they're using this, they're using these firings of these commissioners because that's their right. They have that power. If they're going to be serious about holding Walz to making him accountable, they need to go after Jan Malcolm because she is the hitman going to these businesses and finding them. Mm-hmm. I mean, why on earth are we allowing this to happen? And so I think in many ways they're just as guilty because they are allowing this to occur. The Democrats fight like this is war. Republicans need to start fighting like this war because that's what politics is. It's war. It's full-on combat, and there's something at stake here. Their businesses dying. You're going to continue hearing this. You're going to continue. You hear about the big ones like Surly's Brew House is going to stop operating. You hear about Butcher and Boar. But we don't always hear about the little mom and pop shops. I drove up the North Shore a couple weeks ago, and you see the ones that are no longer in business, and no one's talking about that.
Yeah. And then a lot of people don't realize how much impact like a $5,000 or $7,000 fine will have on these small businesses. Fine Surly Brewing $5,000, they don't bat an eye. Find some small restaurant or small barber that much money, and that just ate up their profit for the month. These are not
exactly
all high dollar operations. It's really
That's right.
tough. So tell us, people should be visiting your website. People should be visiting your Facebook. What kind of content are you putting out there?
Yeah, so Action for Liberty is watching the legislature and all the things that are going on in politics in Minnesota. Now, we come from this not just, hey, go Team Red, or we're definitely not go Team Blue. What we are is we're pro-liberty, right? And our mission is to protect liberty for the next generation. And we don't believe government can grow and liberty can expand. It's opposite of each other. So what we're always doing is evaluating if this grows government, shrinks liberty, and vice versa. If we expand liberty, government's got to shrink. So we have a scorecard on our website. You might be real shocked to see how bad your legislator is voting because there are not a lot of good ones up at the Capitol, unfortunately. All Republican senators on our scorecard are failures. So we've got a big problem with these guys. Yeah, it's unbelievable. They're all Fs. The House has a big disparity in votes. It's really interesting. We've only done our scorecard for 2 years. In the House 2018, the majority of the scores were Fs, the House Republican caucus. Then the next year they were in the minority. Oh, there you go. Yeah, why don't you click on that real quick.
Right here?
Yep. And scroll down. So those are the A pluses. Those are the guys that got 100%. And you can see freshmen. Yep, there you go. Now, you see 3 of those are people that Action for Liberty supported. Cal Barr, Shane Mecklin, and Jeremy Munson. Cal, we took out a 22-year Republican incumbent. And we've also retired Bob Lunan in 55A. And up there, you got freshman scores. You'll see when we get behind candidates, they vote well. When we lose in races like Kristen Robbins, we had a really good candidate there, Brad Ganser. Greg Bowe, we had Vince Baudette. So when we lose, we actually they end up giving you a real bad score. So it's kind of interesting to see what kind of candidates the establishment picks. But we gave away an award because this was our second year. It's called the Phony Conservative Award. Yeah, we gave it to people who had a 45-point swing once they got in the minority. Magically, these guys are conservative when it doesn't matter anymore, right? They're opposing all these Democrat bills. But when they're in the majority, see, we're not going to pretend like we're not seeing this, right? We're going to call them on it. When they're in the majority, they are growing government. Kurt Dowd is expanding government. Ann New is expanding government. Jim Nash is expanding government. And I know a lot of conservatives, First Tuesday Conservatives name of the group, and Alpha News has a big conservative audience. You're always wondering, who's the biggest rhino up in the Capitol? And just by pure votes, down on the bottom in blue, Creeshaw, Baker, Hamilton, and Bennett are the worst voting Republicans. Now, this is how we evaluate a bill. Does it grow government or does it expand liberty, right? Yeah. So if it grows government, it's a bad vote. If it expands liberty, it's a good vote. And these people continue to fail at that stuff. And you can see the most liberal Republican senators there, Rarick, Hall, Miller, and Senjum. Those are actually pretty normal scores. And when you go into this now, I know this First Tuesday used to meet in White Bear Lake. Chamberlain's I think a 10% on her scorecard. So a very poor voter. So go to actionforliberty.com and click on scorecard, and you can look up the votes of your people. And then have a conversation with these guys about it. And maybe, have a conversation with Roger Chamberlain if a lot of people from White Bear Lake are here. Have a conversation. Where were you in May, Roger? Why didn't you push against Gazelka in leadership to get us a vote to end Wall's emergency powers? And where were you forcing the retirement or the firing of Jen Malcolm? How many more businesses need to be fined?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is the kind of stuff people need to pay attention to because we're all very interested in the outcome of the presidential election on November 3rd, of course. But people haven't realized, I think, until COVID, just how much effect these state legislators can have. And I feel like we've been saying this in every single interview, but you really make that point. And that's why we're glad that we're having you on right now. It's very important stuff. So aside from reading your site, keeping up with your Facebook, talking to these legislators, what else should people be doing? Where else can they keep getting news, and how can people help you fight this fight?
Yeah, if you just go to Action for Liberty, if you could pull up our website here, actionforliberty.com, what we do is we post quite regularly, at least when there's a legislative session, and we'll write in a way that no one else, you won't get that from anyone else. I mean, Alpha News is a very good news source, so they're probably the closest thing.
Well, we write a lot of your press releases, so we get a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And I've done some commentary with Alpha News, but you'll just see, like, for instance, you'll see September 12th on the bottom, the green. We're calling out Gazelka and Limmer for failing Minnesota, but see, it's not just going against the Republicans. If you go back to that main page, and we'll break down and we'll actually show you votes too in this thing, but. We show Walz extending the orders. We'll see when, Jennifer Carnan, the chair of the Republican Party, is out of line. That's a good article there. If you click on that, you're not going to hear this. Actually, Alpha News did report on this, but, you won't hear about this too often, but how, these people are turning against conservatives in Minnesota, like the Republican Party. they actually cut off the data for Jeremy Munson. They had a primary challenger. Kurt Dowd found a primary challenge against the most conservative member of the Minnesota legislature. Luckily, we kicked their butt. But they actually had the Jobs Coalition, a center-right group, spend $12,000 in negative mailers against Jeremy Munson. People talk about this stuff.
You've got a sort of a genuine conservative out there doing legitimately conservative things, and then the state party is funding a primary challenger against that person. Am I understanding this properly?
Well, I wouldn't say it that way. The state party's not doing it.
Oh, okay.
Allies of maybe the state party are certainly the House Republican Caucus. Another interesting one was in 2018 when we took out a two-term incumbent, Bob Loonan, and replaced him with Eric Mortensen. The House Republican Campaign Committee, run by Kurt Dowd, spent $30,000 against the endorsed Republican candidate in 55A. The House Republican Campaign Committee is an affiliate of the Minnesota GOP. Now, they spent money against an endorsed candidate in GOP, and they've never had any retribution for that. So, yeah, I mean, listen, guys, politics is really ugly. If you want, I know there'll be people watching this that will hate my guts. They don't care about what I'm saying because they're Team Red, and they either have something over their face and they want to remain blind, or they really don't like our types because we're very conservative and we're not we hate the swamp. That's the best part about the Trump 2016 campaign is get rid of the swamp. The swamp's running a lot of the show, and we call this stuff out. If you want to change politics, if you truly are conservative, right? You're truly conservative, you got to stop supporting these people that grow government because they'll never change, right? You have to start supporting the people that are fundamentally changing the direction of the state of Minnesota. And that's an ugly business because when you got leaders that, in the case of Kurt Dowd, who are actually getting paid as a lobbyist, right? But they have other motivations too. Who knows what it is? A lot of times it's this, but they're not there to challenge the status quo. They're there to keep the status quo, right? It's good for business. So you need people challenging those people when they get up to the Capitol. And that's why Jeremy Munson got a challenger, is because he challenges the status quo. 4 Republicans broke off of the old House Republican caucus and formed the new House Republican caucus, and they don't like that.
Yeah, they don't like
they're some of the most conservative guys up there.
Yeah, it's incredible how much impact small groups of people, the new House Republican caucus, your organization, are having. I think the Republican Party in Minnesota is due for some change, and you guys are definitely bringing it around. So
they haven't won a statewide election since 2006, so
yeah,
it's not a crazy thing to say. Maybe they need some change and rethinking, right?
Yeah. Maybe if you've been doing something for 15 years and it doesn't work, you should rethink it.
It's like the Cleveland Browns coming and saying, "This is how to play football." Really? Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Exactly.
We're gonna try something different. And I look at this many ways like football. Like I'm a GM here, right? And let's just say the Republican Party is the football team, and we want to get to the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl, I would describe as like a conservative renaissance, like actually changing major legislation at the Capitol. And we're never going to get to Super Bowl when we got the same old quarterbacks and the same old players that continue failing us. So we're going into the draft, and that's what we do. We go in the draft and we find good candidates, and we vet them better than anyone. We train them and equip them. Wow. So put your money on Action for Liberty. Go to actionforliberty.com. Sign our petition too to end Wall's emergency powers. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you guys should definitely be following Action for Liberty. Go to their website. They've got a donate link. They've got lots of good resources. So keep up with them. Follow them on Facebook. They have a fantastic presence there. Jake, we really appreciate you being on the show with us tonight. Anything you want to leave us with before we wrap?
Follow Kyle, man. I'm a big fan. What you guys did, I don't think people give you enough credit, but what you and Rebecca did is monumental. People, the mainstream media was AWOL when the whole things went down in Minneapolis, and you guys were on the ground, and unfortunately caught up to you guys a month ago when they started recognizing you. And it's a different world now.
Yeah, it's totally different now. I've noticed this. I've talked to other journalists that have been doing this riot stuff across the country, and now they've gotten organized enough that they're really attacking people with cameras, and the game has changed. Of course, there's still some people, some of my good friends over at the Daily Caller are still out there, so very proud of them. But yeah, we appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Anyway, it's been a fantastic interview, Jake. Glad to have you on. Just one quick announcement before we shut the stream down here. Our next guest, Monday, October 5th at noon, we're going to be talking with David Horowitz from the Freedom Center, and at 6:30 p.m., we're going to be speaking with Will Witt from Prager University. Again, it's been Jake Duesenberg, Action for Liberty. Go check them out on Facebook. Go check out their website. They're fighting the good fight, bringing the change that the Minnesota Republicans need. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.